I can't look after my well-being because I've got a sleep pod in my office.
It's kind of accepting that that is part of the culture. Working really late, staying in the office until 2 a.m. becomes a bit of a trap.
Do you think that it's possible in law to find this ability to protect your own well-being?
We act on autopilot because we have all the external demands coming from our emails, the clients. We're never really tuning into what we're thinking or what we're feeling.
99% of the people didn't take a lunch break.
I never gave myself time to break. Over time, that is just going to lead to burnout.
What about these external pressures within the firm that are forcing you out of good well-being habits?
I kind of lost all my creativity. Our brains can't function on high alert and on high, constant focus 24/7. Brain's never recalibrating into a rest and digest kind of state.
The legal world rewards grind, but at what cost? As lawyers, we're often type A, perfectionists, driven to succeed. Long hours, back-to-back meetings, endless emails, we push ourselves because we think that's what it takes. But here's the thing, are we burning out without even realizing it? When you're always running at 100%, it's easy to lose sight of what truly matters. The constant stress, the lack of balance, it catches up on you. Prioritizing health isn't a luxury, it's a necessity. But I know what you're going to say. As a lawyer, it's easier said than done. Learn how, as a lawyer, to prioritize your health in a culture that thrives on grinding. If we keep ignoring our health, we'll pay the price. In the end, a burned out lawyer is not a successful one. In this episode, I'm getting expert advice. I'm chatting with Grace Williams, a health and nutrition coach and ex-solicitor. She has first-hand experience of how stress, poor diet, and trouble sleeping can really impact your health. By just making a few of these little changes that are mentioned in this episode, you can potentially transform your life. And a lot of people might sleep under their desk or just stay until all hours. How do you recognize burnout in yourself?
So you have your alarm stage, your resistance stage, and the exhaustion stage. It's the hardest thing that I will ever, touch wood, ever have to go through. And it still hurts every single day.
Grace, we have both worked in the legal industry, and I think we've both experienced different things within the industry in terms of, well, everyone does, don't they? In terms of stress and burnout and rushing your lunch or not having a lunch break and just constantly be on the go and just not actually stopping and thinking, is this okay for me and my body? What are your experiences working in law in terms of any mental health struggles, and how did you resolve them?
You definitely define me as a typical type A personality. I'm a perfectionist. I love working hard. And I think when you add that into the legal context, the mental health side of it becomes all the more important because the impact it has is just so much bigger. So for me, I was an arbitration lawyer, so very detail heavy. And I love that. But what it meant was I never gave myself time to break. So the kind of constant thinking about whatever case I was on really takes its toll in the sense of it's the only thing that you have in your brain. And I kind of lost all my creativity. You lose all your motivation for things outside of work. And while that can make you great at your job, in terms of your mental health, I think you start realizing that it's taking a toll because it's just so full on. And definitely taking a step back is the biggest sort of lesson, finding some perspective. Unfortunately, my perspective was sort of a bit of a not the nicest experience through my mum being diagnosed with cancer. That gave me the best perspective that I could find. But the way that it did that brought so much more balance into how I approached work. And it's not saying that you have to go through a big life change like that to find that balance, but it's actually becoming very conscious and aware of okay, my life has become my job. and I'm not getting any space outside of that to do things I genuinely enjoy, that are, you can enjoy your job, but you can also enjoy other things. And being able to bring both is so important. And yeah, having that conscious, okay, I need to find that balance and find the things I enjoy again, makes the non-stop demands of a legal job just more bearable and just a bit easier to sort of manage day to day.
Totally. Do you think that it's possible in law to find this type of balance and space and ability to, I guess, protect your own well-being?
I truly think it is, because I'm always an optimist, but also it comes on two sides. It is never going to be able to be possible if you don't consciously decide you want that. I think the autopilot that comes from being, and not just law, in most corporate jobs, we act on autopilot because we have all the external demands coming from our emails, the clients, whatever it is, that we're never really tuning into what we're thinking or what we're feeling. And so that wellness piece is possible, but you have to proactively implement it. And the word boundaries, I think, is quite loaded, because quite often when you say, okay, you need to draw boundaries, people see that as like, okay, well, therefore you're not doing your job properly because you've brought in a boundary and you're trying to sort of separate yourself from work. But actually, boundaries can be a lot smaller than that, but very, very significant to you. So it can be as small as, for me, stepping outside for 10 minutes after lunch just to walk around the block, even if it was absolutely pouring with rain. That 10 minutes out of the office in the middle of the day became a non-negotiable for me, that reset my energy, reset my mood. And that is a boundary that I always say to clients, you could have gone to, say, get some water from the kitchen and bumped into a partner and ended up in a 10-minute conversation. You were away from your desk for the same amount of time just by chance because you got up at that exact moment and bumped into someone. So taking those 10 minutes to walk around the block can actually do you so much good and bring in that wellness piece that's important to you because you've given yourself some headspace, without being a strict boundary in the sense of like, oh, I'm going to be unattainable for an hour and away from my emails, that I think everyone starts fearing. So it's possible with a lot of intention from you, being very proactive with it, and also understanding how to do it in a way that's sort of adaptable to the lifestyle that comes with being in law.
Yeah, I think you're so right about being intentional and being aware of it. I think it's so important. And when I worked in law, I also did the same thing. You know, I prioritized having that walk at lunchtime. But I think, I mean, there's probably people listening to this and they're thinking, that sounds great. However, is it actually possible? Because I know that when I worked in one law job, they basically started arranging obligatory lunch and learns. So we had to spend our lunch break learning about a certain area of law that we were working in, or a better way of working, or how to be more efficient, or whatever it was. They provided lunch for us, and then we had to basically listen to a presentation. And that was our lunch break, although they didn't explicitly say you cannot take a lunch break. But 99% of the people didn't take a lunch break because they were like, well, that's our lunch break because it's a lunch and learn. But I was like, I don't care what anyone says. I'm still going to have my walk. What would you say to the people who think, what about these external pressures within the firm that are forcing you out of good well-being habits?
I can say it because we had those lunch and learns as well, and it is such a, they're so supposed to be something, and they always put on a nice lunch and you're supposed to feel like it is a rest and a kind of break, but actually you're also supposed to be taking in all the information, so your brain's not switching off at all. And I think when it comes to that, is in terms of how you approach those things, really sort of understand that that's not giving your brain a break. Ultimately, all of these things come back to, our brains can't function on high alert and on high, like, constant focus 24/7. And so if you really feel those external pressures of like, this has been titled a lunch and learn, actually taking a bit of ownership and taking a little bit of control and going, no, this is a learn. Yes, there might be lunch there, but this is just about learning. So that hour has been a really productive hour of me learning about the law and learning about that topic, but it's not been productive in giving me a break. So I am going to take 20 minutes or even 10 minutes, whatever it is you have that day, to reset and do that. And if you can't do it straight afterwards, bring it in later in the day, bring it in at 4 p.m. There is a almost applying time recording to your day. Time recording is the bugbear that we all have to deal with in law. But actually, if you think about it, if you time recorded your day, that hour is still going towards law. So where can you bring in half an hour or 20 minutes, 10 minutes that is towards yourself? And balance, again, is a hard word, because what does balance mean? Is it supposed to be 50-50? Every day is going to be different. But looking at time recording not just being these are my legal hours that I've done today, but actually you need also some time for yourself. And that 1 hour, that lunch and learn, falls into the legal category. It doesn't fall into the lunch break from work category.
Yeah, totally. So it's being extra aware of not only what you need as a person, but that these types of pressures from potentially management, where they're making you assume that you can't take a break now because you've had a lunch, just to kind of, I guess, question those and think, well, what do I actually need, and bring it back to boundaries and awareness and these things that you've spoken about, right?
Yeah, and I think because health is one of those things that really only you have control over your health. And if the partners, if the seniors aren't interested in taking that time, that's their sort of prerogative, and that's how they approach their day. But if health is something that's really important to you, and sort of getting that balance and getting that feeling of being able to manage both, if that's really important to you, you've got to make time for what's important. And again, that's not taking 2 hours to do something. It's what are the small things you can do throughout the day to bring in that feeling of health and that feeling of sort of well-being. One of the things I hear a lot from clients or from corporate workshops is like, oh, I feel so much better on the days I work from home because I'm able to sort of bring in my healthy habits. And there's a lot of truth in that, because when you're at home, you're in a bit more in control of your day, because you haven't got that pressure around you of like, we've had the lunch and learn and now everyone's back at their desk and they're going to notice if I've gone outside. But it's almost having the confidence with that to go, actually, I need this to function better when it comes to my work. So it's almost like, would you say, you could say to a partner, I'm actually not going to send that research. It's going to be 50% worse if I don't take 10 minutes right now. And they'd probably be like, okay, fair enough. Like, go take the 10 minutes because I want that research to be really, really great. And it's always giving yourself that permission in the same way that someone else would give it to you if you explained it to them. I don't know if that resonates.
It's an attitude that I would love to have and that I have now, but it's definitely not an attitude that I had working in law. I think I felt like I wasn't confident in myself to say to a manager, well, actually, I'm going to take a break first and then I'm going to do what you ask me to do. I just wouldn't have had that confidence at all. So I think I would find that tricky.
And no, and to be fair, me, like externally, me neither. It's the internal confidence. It's the, I would never have that conversation outwardly because again, yeah, but that would absolutely terrify me. But when you know it internally that actually that 10 minutes is going to make you function so much better, slowly over time. And these things, it's not going to be tomorrow you're suddenly going to feel totally fine taking a break, because it takes time to ingrain it in your own brain that it's okay, as opposed to everyone else's. And I think a bit like, what's the saying? Actually, we think that everyone's looking at us and we get really self-conscious, but actually everyone is just thinking about themselves. Very rarely are people really kind of actively watching you. No one's probably not going to notice that you're not at your desk. Like, you still have your work phone, I'm going to guess. So they're not going to notice if you're not there. We just think that if that's not the case. And it's slowly picking out these sort of, what are your beliefs around what being in the office means, what being at work means. And it's a very interesting exercise to do of like, what do I believe about being away from my desk? What do I believe about, yeah, not taking my phone to the bathroom with me. And once you identify that thought pattern, starting to challenge it a little bit, and not in a way that's kind of, okay, I'm no longer going to do that, or I'm going to change this completely, but just building. A lot of this is about bringing awareness to what you're doing. As we said, the autopilot is so strong when you're in corporate because everything is external. So it's just slowly building that awareness of things around you and how your kind of internal is interacting with the external. And over time, that's when the changes kind of come in because you've built that awareness at the same time.
I completely agree with what you're saying. And I think it's so important for people to hear that as well. Definitely. Because especially, when I was working in law, I was definitely in autopilot and wasn't even aware that I was in autopilot. So you even just saying that out loud and explaining that idea, I think will help so many people. So I think it's brilliant. I'm on a mission to help lawyers realise that there's another way. They don't have to practice law in the traditional way. We're not all made to work in an office. Some people want to travel and work. Some people want to be their own bosses. Others want a side business. So with this, I want to ask you for 2 favours. Please leave a review on whichever podcast platform you're using. And secondly, please share this episode with at least one friend who you think would benefit from it. I do want to talk about your journey and your story. But before we do that, I just want to ask one more thing about, I guess, toxicity within law that might contribute to bad well-being. So I know that a lot of firms, mainly the big ones, have these sleep pods so people can stay overnight. And a lot of people might sleep under their desk or, just stay until all hours. What on earth would you say to people who are like, I can't look after my well-being because I've got a sleep pod in my office? It's this, it's on your mind.
It really is. And I remember as a trainee, us finding the sleep pods and we were like, oh yeah, they exist. And then we were all intrigued as how you get a key to them, which I don't know who then found that out, who was the first to trial them. I think it's kind of accepting that is part of the culture, that those sleep pods are there, but also having the awareness, again, back to that awareness point of that doesn't mean you are supposed to use the sleep pod. I love the kind of analogy of your life is all on dials. And sometimes that work dial is going to be on, it's probably going to be 150, not just 100. The work dial is going to be on so high. And it is knowing in that time period, it's kind of accepting that right now the work dial is on extra high. What can I do in the lead up, if you can kind of see it happening, and then afterwards to bring things back down into balance? Because again, that word balance is not balance every single day. It's balance over the course of, say, a year, 2 years, even longer. And if you put the pressure on yourself of okay, if I ever have to go near that sleep pod, that's so toxic and I can't be healthy, ultimately it's a really negative side of the job that so much happens throughout the night. We are the last to get the emails at 6 p.m. when the clients want something done. And it's kind of what we accept. And you kind of know it's what you accept when you go into it of there's going to be some late nights, but almost giving yourself the grace of there's going to be those nights and they're going to be hard and my health is going to be pushed to the side. But what can I make sure I do afterwards to really, really help myself so that I'm not continuing on that super high 150 kind of level of work and recalibrating again and coming back down? Because I think the sleep pods become, or that working really late, staying in the office until 2 a.m. becomes a bit of a trap. Once you start falling into it, it becomes your norm because your brain kind of craves it in a way of okay, I was so productive. I did the work really well. I was rewarded for it. I was told how great I was. But actually, over time, that is just going to lead to burnout. Our bodies are amazing and they function incredibly. As long as we're giving them the right resources, we can deal with high levels of stress. And we're built to deal with those high levels of stress. but only if you're also giving yourself the resources. And if those resources are missing, you're going to keep functioning and functioning and doing amazingly. And then suddenly you're going to hit a wall because you've not noticed all the little physical things that were coming up for you. And that's when you hit the wall and you hit burnout. So however hard that is, unless you've experienced to kind of believe, because you're like, well, no, I'm doing great. As someone that has been through it, and I work with clients that are also going through it, burnout is real, and especially in these professions. So yeah, I've gone on a bit of a tangent there, but it's definitely there is that toxic side, and knowing that some days you've got to accept it and that's going to fall part and parcel.
Mm-hmm.
But then when you're out of it, coming back to that starting point and kind of recalibrating. And my thing with the sleep pods as well is like, surely you want to go home, even if it's just for half an hour, to jump in the shower and be straight back in the office. Like, I'd rather get no sleep than find myself in a sleep pod. That's my other thing about sleep pods.
Yeah, you couldn't relax. It'd just be so weird. Like,
I know. And it's such a like, I don't know, surely you want to shower or just like splash your face with some water, see a different like scenery. But yeah, some people I think quite liked the sleep pods.
fair enough. How do you recognize burnout in yourself?
For me personally, or sort of generally?
Generally.
When it comes, burnout goes from you are functioning on amazingly, you're probably getting everything done, you don't feel like anything is wrong. And then there will be a day where you wake up and you have no energy. And it's not you're hitting a wall. It's not I'm just tired. It's that you have truly depleted all of your resources, all the fuel, everything has just run to zero. And that reflects in how you feel. But the thing I always say about stress is there are 3 stages to the stress response. So you have your alarm stage, your resistance stage, and the exhaustion stage. And exhaustion is burnout. The earlier stages, that alarm stage is kind of the traditional fight or flight that you think of that we all sort of know about. But that resistance stage in the middle is where you really want to be aware of what's happening in your body, because that's when the sort of sneaky physical signs of being in a high stress environment start showing. If you're in that high stress environment and you're not getting any symptoms, you're a long way from burnout. But if you are getting a lot of those symptoms, that is when you can tune in and go, okay, a lot of these things are coming up for me. I need the extra support and extra fuel to stop this all running out and my energy and my cortisol just completely tanking. So yes, it's things like restlessness, exhaustion, feeling tired, feeling agitated, but it's small things like one of the kind of crazy ones I always think of is like, if you constantly need stimulation, if you can't walk without headphones, without music, or you can't eat a meal without something on in the background, that is your brain craving constant sort of high alert, high energy, high efficiency. And that's because your brain's never recalibrating into a rest and digest kind of state. So those types of feelings, constant stimulation, listening to everything on double speed, bloating, weight gain around the middle, these are all very small signs that are showing you that you are on the path to burnout. And that's not necessarily that you're going to reach burnout, but just that you need to take action in order to support yourself. Because all of these things, it's about longevity. You want longevity in your career. You want that success. And the way to get that is you also have to fill your own cup up. Like, you can fill work as much as possible, but you'll deplete yourself at the same time. So again, it's the small things that you can do. But those burnout symptoms, you know when you reach it because you're probably not going to get out of bed. But the lead up to that is when you really want to tune in to sort of how you're feeling and what's coming up for you.
I've actually never heard anyone say that out loud, like, and never explain that process of burnout. So that's super interesting actually to hear about. Obviously people have their own feelings and they go through their own things, but I've never heard anyone explain it. So thank you for that.
No, you're welcome. And it's one of the biggest frustrations, because burnout's a word we all use so easily, but it's a very scientific period of the stress response. And it's almost drawing those lines of, okay, where are you at? I call it the stress spectrum. Where are you on the stress spectrum? Are you in that really early stage, or are you getting towards the burnout? And it's a graph. You get the spike up, you're going along on the alarm resistance, and then you tank in the exhaustion. And if you're visual, kind of having that graph in your head is like, okay, where am I at on this? and then taking that second to be like, okay, what do I now need to do and bring in to help yourself?
Got you. At the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned to me about your mum being diagnosed with cancer, and I know that also you became a carer whilst also working in your law job. Do you mind talking a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, of course. So I was a third seat trainee at the time, and pretty much out of nowhere, my mum was diagnosed with a brain tumor. It's the summer of 2019. And when you're a trainee, that split brain of I'm supposed to be impressing every single day versus I have something huge and personal happening is a really interesting place to be in. As I said, type A personality, perfectionist. I will always say with kind of my story, my journey, I was extremely lucky with my teams and my firm who were understanding from the get-go of what I was going through. But it was so my mum was diagnosed, and then actually 6 months later, my dad was diagnosed with lymphoma. So they both went through cancer at the same time.
Oh my God.
And the first 6 months, I was in the office Monday to Friday, and this was pre-COVID. So in the office Monday to Friday, getting the last train home on a Friday, first train back in on a Monday morning, and spending the weekend cooking literally for the week so that my family had meals or my parents had meals to eat throughout the week. And at that stage, they were still kind of both quite able. COVID then hit, and I will say that was COVID obviously was one of the most negative things we've all been through. But personally, it brought a blessing because suddenly I was able to be at home and do the thing I always wanted to do, which was continue my job, but also be a carer for my mum. My aunt said to me from day one, just don't have any regrets when it comes to looking after mummy. And I brought that into every day of I still want to work, but I want to make sure I'm doing everything possible that I will never sort of look back on and be like, oh, I put work ahead of that or something like that. So it was a very intense time. Especially none of us were leaving the house, which again helped a little bit. There were no distractions, but I was also on a massive construction arbitration at the time. So I think probably 3 months into COVID, that's when I then experienced burnout because I had pushed it too far. I was kind of looking after my mum in the day until probably I put her in bed at 7, 8 p.m. and then starting work at that time and working until whatever time of the night. Again, I was fortunate it was arbitration and it wasn't, I need this in the next half an hour. It wasn't transactional. So I had that. I had more space to have a bit of control over my day and be able to balance the two. But there was no balance. Like there was balance in the sense that I was completely forgotten in that. And that experience, not only of watching my mum sort of getting sicker, she passed away. She lived with it for 3 years. So it was the 3 years of caring. So not only was it kind of the watching her get sick and sort of giving that perspective in the sense of, okay, what's important to me in the sense of how I approach work, but actually going through the burnout experience was also a massive eye opener of like, okay, you can't give out and give nothing back because all of those extra things that you're adding onto your plate, you have to sort of offload in other ways. I was still trying to get 10,000 steps every day, still getting a workout, cook every meal for all five. I've got two brothers, all five of us were at home. But actually, things had to fall away. The steps had to fall away. The workouts needed to become 5 minutes of yoga in the morning. And the whole experience genuinely gave a lot of perspective. And for anyone that's going through something similar, of whether it's sort of a personal, something in the family happening, I really stand by just have no regrets. And I believe that everything follows from that, that if you have the agency and the confidence of like, I know this is right for me, my family, whatever the situation is, if you're able to have confidence and kind of trust in that, the people around you are going to believe in that as well. And as I said, I was really lucky with my firm and my team who were amazing at supporting me. But that also came from I knew what was important to me, and I really stuck by that. Again, I know that confidence piece is really difficult when impressing is so important and doing well in the job is so important. But having the awareness and the sort of initiative's not really the right word, but having the, wanting to do something and bringing that in reflects on other people, and they actually can start believing it too, that you can do both and you can be a carer, you can also work, you can have your personal battles, you can have your personal priorities and also get the work done. It might just need some tailoring, and that tailoring is a collaborative process between you and the company. And actually you can find a lot of freedom in that if you work together rather than against each other.
That is an incredible story. It's just crazy how one person could deal with that.
It definitely at the time was very, very difficult. It's taken a long time to sort of come out the other side and find some positives in it. But I always like to find positives, and it gave a whole new perspective. Even when I was in law and still working, having that perspective of, I was someone that had anxiety quite badly at university, deadlines, whatever it was, I would have panic attacks. And at the time, I actually didn't know they were panic attacks because it wasn't really spoken about. But when I went into law, I kind of, you have that fear of like, God, is a filing going to completely knock me sideways? But the experience has given me perspective. I suddenly realized that that filing, yes, was so important to my job and I didn't want to mess it up, but it was not going to have the same importance to me personally in 10 years' time. Actually, my panic attacks, my anxiety, how I approach things is so much more important for my long-term health, my longevity, all of those things. So it brought that perspective even while in it. And sometimes, as I said, just taking a step back and being like, I like the job, I really want to do well, but can I look at this in a healthier perspective? And I think COVID has helped with that as well. People are starting to know about mental health more and sort of bringing that in. But it'll take time, and it does, as we said at the start, you have to be conscious and a bit more proactive with it.
I guess for you, that whole experience, the burnout, the being a carer, the working full time in law, I guess that was a massive wake up call for you because it made you realize, okay, what are my priorities here? My mum is seriously ill. My dad is also ill. I've got burnout. I'm stressed. There's so much to deal with and handle. What switched in your mind to make you think, I want to become a health and nutrition coach?
It was an interesting process because it's something I never would have expected. I've always been very interested in health and wellness. At a young age, I was diagnosed with MS. So I am very have always been so interested in that side of things. But it was my mum passing away that I was like, I need something that's outside of work and that's outside of my head and my emotions to focus on. So that's what kind of gave me the push to do the qualification and certify in it. And when I was doing it, I was like, I'll do nothing with this. Like, this is just a passion project. When you start loving something, and back to that autopilot point, my autopilot in law meant that I never tuned in to really what I genuinely liked or genuinely enjoyed. I couldn't, if someone said, what do you enjoy doing? What are your hobbies? I didn't have any. And that wasn't because I didn't do things. It's just that I didn't know what I liked or enjoyed. The freedom that kind of actually finding something and sort of giving myself the space to find something I liked brought a whole new perspective of like, oh, wow, I can actually enjoy things. And that it kind of all spiraled from there of you start working with clients, you start seeing the differences that people are feeling, and it just lights you up in a completely different way. I know I said it to you in the introduction at the start. For me now, losing my mom is the hardest thing that I will ever, touch wood, ever have to go through. And it still hurts every single day. But being able to use that now as my drive and motivation to do something I love, she's with me every day, sort of guiding me through this process. And however, that probably sounds a bit crazy to some people, but it genuinely, that gave me the confidence to make the change, to change from law. But what I love is that what I'm doing now, I actually couldn't do without having done my time in law, because it feeds so much into how I approach my work, how I approach clients, how we work together. everything that I've learned, yes, you can learn it on paper, but the practical reality of it for all of us and being in corporate, wherever you are, is so different. And law is a unique lifestyle. So being able to bring in that experience now to something that I'm passionate and love is the biggest blessing that there is. And yeah, that's my mum watching down on me being like, well done, you've brought those two together in a completely different way. Which, yeah, as I said, probably sounds a bit strange, but it definitely gives me the drive.
Yeah. Oh, that's so lovely. Yeah. I can see you've got so much drive and ambition with it, and I think it's just amazing. I just love what you're doing, and I love your Instagram, and just yeah, it's just so lovely to see everything. What would you say to people who are like, I need help with my health and nutrition, and what do you offer people, and what do you offer to the industry as well?
I think starting with the industry, it is bringing that real, true understanding of what being in the legal industry is like to the health and nutrition space. I remember going to a stress management talk when I first started in law, and we all left being like, great, we're screwed, but it's what we signed up for. We're going to continue. And actually taking a step back and going, no, it doesn't have to be that way. There are things, there's always something you can do. If you can recover from burnout, as in people generally can recover from burnout, you can also incorporate tips to prevent yourself getting there. So industry wide, it is bringing that real lived experience and personal experiences into health and wellness and health and nutrition, especially when it comes to nutrition, because it's such an overlooked piece of the puzzle. And that's actually in terms of like what people can do and how my services, it's very much we're going to be working together, but in a way that is suited to your lifestyle, your likes, your dislikes, whether you like cooking, whether you don't like cooking. But fundamentally, it comes down to how are you nourishing yourself and what are you doing for you each day? And what can you add? This isn't about kind of restriction, taking things away, but really adding. So I work with clients one-to-one. I have a few different ways that I do that, but otherwise it's also through corporate wellness programs, because really companies are becoming a lot more aware of the importance of mental health, nutrition, but we're still quite far behind, especially in law. If you think about the side of Instagram that is so hot in health and wellness, and then you think about the legal industry. So again, it's marrying those two together, but I can share all the details to how to work together, and what my offers are that, yeah, span from the one-to-one and then very tailored legal workshops that are bringing that reality into nutrition and how you can do it even if you have no time to cook, because genuinely there are things you can do to bring the good nutrition in without spending hours in the kitchen that frankly none of us want to do anyway.
I think it's brilliant that you've combined law and nutrition, two like, on the face of it, completely opposite things.
Yeah.
What is the best way that people can get in contact with you?
So most of my information is all on Instagram. So my handle is g_documented. But otherwise I have my website as well, which is gdocumented.com. And they would be the best two ways. My email and everything is on there. And yeah, pop me an email, send me any questions. I'm always so happy to answer questions, even if it's just you're going through something small at the moment and you just don't know where to start. So yeah, please send me a message because I'm always just so happy to help.
If you've ever wondered how to build a legal career that fits your lifestyle and values, I've created something for you. 25 Ways to Do Law Differently and Get Paid for It is a free guide filled with simple yet impactful ideas for lawyers who want more freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment in their work. Just go to the description where you'll find the link.